What is orange peel? Well, that is one of the goals of this video. So if you look at the edge of this reflection, and I think that's the top of my garage, never mind the trees, the blue skies, you'll see that the edge is scattered. It's not perfectly refined like a true mirror. That is orange peel effect. It's natural. Virtually every car will have it. And by every car, I mean every factory original paint system. The clear coat will be the top layer that sits atop of the base coat / color coat. Depending upon who you talk to, they'll refer to the color as the base coat or the color coat. The clear coat is very thin. What I want to do is show you wet sanding, and I thought I could get this angle because it really shows this natural highlights, the trees, the houses across the street. So I'm going to take you through the steps. I'm not going to lift my skirt up entirely for you guys because I get paid very good money to teach this to guys. But what I will do is I'm going to give you enough information, if nothing else, hopefully entertainment, to see this process in action. Just know that every part of the process, from taping it off to sanding, my choice in sanding blocks, everything is based on a strategy, based on what I'm charging a person, as in a customer that wants their car wet sanded to perfection. Based on what I'm charging them will determine how much effort. Once again, it's all about the details, right? The more details you want perfect, the higher the price tag will be. What I'm going to do is just do an initial tape off. This is regular painter's tape. You can buy it Home Depot or wherever. I'm just going to tape off some areas because I want to be able to have a sharp contrast before and after type of moment. I'm also going to tape off for a little bit of protection, whether it's protection of the sanding process or protection from the polishing process. And when I'm going through, like let's say I'm doing this for a customer, I will do taping because tape is a form of protection. Protection from, can be a lot of things, from sanding the wrong material, getting sand marks on it, to sanding like high points, as in a character line here. So there's many ways that you can finesse, and this is what's called gridding. So the finer the grid, the more the price tag will be for what I charge. For example, many detailers will look at this car as one entity. Yes, it's going in the body shop, by the way, which is why I can do what I want with these panels. Many people, car owners, detailers that are beginners, will look at this car as a single entity. Or some will say like, oh, I've got to deal with each panel separately as its own entity for a higher level of perfection. But there is no limit to how you grid that out. So I could grid this out to the point where I'm going to scrutinize like literally every inch of this car. So I literally could grid it out. And I don't mean physically. I don't have to physically do this with tape and like, okay, this square inch is now perfect. I can then move on to another square inch and tape it off. No, this is happening mentally in my head. Right now, you can just visually see this because I want you to see the constraints that I've set up for the moment, which is I'm going to be working on this area only. So that's just a little, piece of information. I will do my best to keep this camera in the same position just to verify. I don't know if that's going to show up because the lighting, I'm shooting into the bright light, which is a no-no. But that's to show the reflections. This is 2000 grit. The P stands for P grit, which is a higher level of performance, as in more uniform. Back in the day, sandpapers could be very ununiform, uneven as to the particle size. So it was very disturbing trying to retain control, knowing that your sandpaper itself was not a precision-made piece of paper with abrasive particles. So the P grit is more precision-made, and no, that's not what P stands for. I'm just telling you. Okay, so why would you want to wet sand versus just buffing? Well, I can reduce it once again down to one word: control. So for example, and I will do this, we'll see what captures. I'm going to lightly sand across this. And what happens is, because I'm using a block, now this is a pretty firm block, but it's not completely rigid. It's still malleable, which means if I forced it hard enough, but if I wanted to retain the curvature, I would be using a softer, more malleable block. Because what I want to block this so that I just take off the high points down to a level that I've determined is acceptable or safe. Once again, I'm working on factory clear coat. I want to do this for you on camera without burning through the clear coat itself. I'm not worried about the integrity of the clear coat because this is going into the body shop. So that's that balance act. If you were working in a body shop environment, if you failed, made a mistake, you just pull it back in the spray booth and apply more clear coat, and you could just do a do-over. In this world, you don't have that luxury. So only you can decide if you were to attempt this. So I'm using a block because I want to create a flatter surface. And by flat, I mean absent of texture. So what I'm doing is I'm just lightly, because I'm going to show you one moment first, what the goal of the sandpaper is to control. So let's say, and this is a used pad, FYI, for a previous video. This is very malleable. So if I was just to think like, oh, I'm gonna remove the orange peel by just buffing it away. Well, no, you're not. Because what you've done is you've lost control. Because not only will you be buffing the high spots, but you'll also be simultaneously buffing the low spots. So before that clear coat gets flattened out, before the orange peel gets flattened out, you will burn through the clear coat. So sandpaper is control, and the block specifically is additional control because I want as flat as possible. Because what I want to do is literally shave off, sand off the high points and get closer and bridge the gap between the low points of the orange peel and the high points of the orange peel. So I'm wearing down the high points to a point that I have determined is safe based on original factory clear. So let me see if I can pull you in. So what you're looking for is the rough sanded areas, the scratch marks, but you'll see that it's uneven. That's because of the block and the rigidness of the sandpaper also, that it literally just sanded the high points of this area. But all those low points have remained untouched. But if I was to take a buffer to it, I would be buffing the high points and the low points simultaneously, which is what happens in the world. And that's acceptable because factory clear coats were not intended to be wet sanded down to perfection. They just weren't. Now some, like for example, Aston Martin, they actually go through this process on every car, but that's a high-end car, very different animal compared to most other cars. So it's a case by case. I don't know what car manufacturers literally are or aren't doing this. So once again, every step of this process will be based on strategy. Now, like I said, I'm not going to teach you every single aspect of it. Like for example, notice how I just changed directions. That could be a non-issue or it could be an issue. Once again, depends on your quality of work, your tools that you've chosen. You know, as the saying goes, you do generally get what you pay for. And that goes with every part of this equation, from the sandpaper, the sanding block, the polish that I'm using, everything, as well as every technique. How do I tape it off? How aggressive am I sanding? So you're always going to be weighing in on, okay, who is my audience? Who's paying for this? What are the limitations? Okay, it's factory clear coat. It's going to be naturally thin. I've got a limited or a finite thickness to work with. What is my skill level? Am I going to take the risk of burning an edge inadvertently, unwantingly, which is not even a word? So a lot of this, I guess my point is, a lot of this does not translate onto video. So here I am, and I just want to really walk you through the process so you can see the difference. Now, I'm not going to intentionally try to flatten this out entirely because I feel like I would run out of clear coat, because that orange peel on that car is pretty significant. Here's my pad. Okay, so now what we're going to reveal is how flat, how much texture I removed in that process of sanding as much as I did. Once again, I'm really fast tracking this, all in the name of your viewing pleasure. So let's scan, and you'll see now that I've taken it down. There's still some areas that are not quite fully dry. What you'll notice, for example, that the sandpaper had little impact towards the edge of the tape. That's for a couple reasons. But you'll see that some of these areas I took down the orange peel 100%. And literally the orange peel is not created equal, meaning every high point, if you were able to measure it, would literally be different height than the next high point, as well as a low point. So this would be the limitation of the moment, is that I don't have that kind of clear coat to take it down all the way to perfectly flat, as in zero texture. So that's part of the limitations. Now what I'm gonna do is let me get this in different lighting. I'm gonna start polishing here and work my way back, and hopefully you can see it in action. This is pretty darn cool. Since my pad is already seasoned and I don't have to overthink this moment, I'm gonna just go with the pad that I used in a video just prior to this. So you can see the used polish here, the new polish. I'm turning this up to 1400 RPMs, and this is how we teach it. Put the polish in the middle, infuse it into the pad. Now this is where rotary really comes in, because I can go up onto an edge and really create a higher level of friction and cut to the chase. Just FYI, when we teach our system, and I say our because I invested some of my money into CSI. So when Tom Horvath, the formulator, wow, that is looking cool. So let me just show you what we have going on already. Is he recommends that you take this to 2500 grit. If you're going up to 5000, 8000 grit, okay, you just don't value money, as in time. Time equals money. That is absurd that you would take it to that level, because I can sand to complete flat, as in zero texture, and now granted, I could start out with 800 grit sandpaper, transition those sanding marks to 1000, to 1500, 2500, whatever order you would go. The real goal is to create what's called a uniform scratch pattern, which means that the scratches are all uniform in depth. So right now I use 2000 grit. Now, I did not remove all the surface texture. Point I'm trying to illustrate is that this industry, it's not lacking in hype. It's not lacking in absurd moments. So if you're taking your work, I'll just round up to 3000 grit. If you're going above 3000 grit, you're just wasting time. You're embellishing, and maybe you're doing a marketing moment, so maybe you can make a cool post on Instagram or Facebook or wherever. It's like, oh yeah, I sanded in all the way to 10,000 grit. Because check this out. Let's see if this shows. I'm gonna take my finger, I'm gonna wet it, and I'm gonna sit here and just do this. And you can start seeing this little area that is now being shined up. Is it perfect? Of course not. But I'm trying to show you that, okay, if I can do that with my finger, which is an absurd illustration, on 2,000 grit sanding marks, if you went up to 2,500 and 3,000, that would actually be shinier. So I hope you're picking up what I am putting down. So let me move the camera and try to get you in some working lighting. I'm going to come back in with an application of polish. I'll show you what I got. Keep it in. Now at this point, I would be willing to guess that I'm probably about 98% corrected as far as sanding marks go. Now I'm not going to overly scrutinize it. I will, let's see what shows up on this. So this is my corrected area, which is looking pretty refined, but I can tell it's not perfect. And once again, so I'll show you this area of the car, and it should be revealing all kinds of spider webbing, cobwebbing, wash, scratch, as compared to this area. See how that light source is more refined? Oh, wow, sometimes you would think I never went a day in the gym based on the heavy breathing. Now, one of my tricks is I take out readers. These are serious magnifiers. I think they're like 3.25 if you ever go into... See, there's some blemishes in this paint that are so deep that the amount of sanding I did is still not deep enough to remove it, as well as I can still see orange peel because I'm using the light above to cast a reflection here, which is going to be different than your reflection, and I can see that the outline of that reflection is not like a true mirror. So this is not perfected paint. By perfected, I mean perfectly flat. Zero texture, zero swirl marks. It's not that, but it's way better. Okay, Johnny Racer outside. So what I'm gonna do now is look at this through my unaided eye, just kind of scrutinize, and once again, lighting at this level of work, if I'm charging thousands of dollars to do this kind of work, lighting is truly critical. I would be working in different lighting conditions, but to try to capture on film is very different than having my customer come out and scrutinizing the work based on different ways I'm going to hold the lighting. To try to capture that on film, it becomes like an impossible ask. So, but what you can see is that there's more refinement to the edges of the reflected overhang of the roof garage. The trees, specifically looks like the trees right through here, way more clarity. So let me, at this point, you can either stay to the rotary polisher, but since I already had the DA polisher out for the last video, I'm gonna switch to the Max Shine 15 millimeter. This is our blue cutting pad for the DA application. Going to just put some polish on that and refine the surface even more. And FYI, I had that speed set to 6. Maximum output on that Max Shine buffer. Let me remove the polish. What we can do, in fact, is I can use the panel below it. So I'm going to take off the tape. Actually, I'm going to make sure that this is being captured. Let me move this around. You can see the reflections of the tree. Dang, I love polishing paint. It is hard work. You have to have a lot of discipline, which is code for lots of patience. See, even taking tape off, there's a technique that should be used based on the car you're working on. And since this is factory paint, I actually don't have to overthink that part. But when it comes to trim pieces that you've taped up, it's a rude awakening when you realize, oh my gosh, the tape is pulling something unwanted up with it. And now what do? Gee, I wish I had taken that course from Darren and learned some of this stuff, these nuances that don't play out in video or are taught by guys that are speaking from regurgitated information rather than firsthand experience. So let me just scan down the edge of this so you know where I mean. The sand marks essentially stopped about here. The tape was here. So we'll see, how does the refinement look here compared to down here? And it's hard for me to even tell because this LCD screen is so small. So look at the reflection of the trees. That's what I want you to be paying attention to. Now, let's look at the reflection of the trees here. That's what I want you to be paying attention to in this moment. And you can see really how quickly I went through this. You know, this is a job that would take, shoot could take weeks of time based on the moment, the customer, the level of precision. Okay, so always check the links below. Today's keyword, I'm gonna pick something random. Alcohol, swan. So if you've been playing along, I'm gonna insert this, and when you make a comment, so I would appreciate if you play along because I get a kick out of it. The key word today is swan. Below in the comments, don't add any context to it. No spoiler alert. This is the secret word today. Put that in the comments below, because those people that didn't endure the video long enough are gonna be like, what's going on? Why does everyone keep putting the word swan independent by itself? I don't get what is going on. If you want to make another comment, just do it separately. And I would love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your questions. That will give me content to produce videos moving forward. Always check the links below. It'll take you to really a deep dive on any subject that I've covered in today's video. With that said, I'm not looking at my watch. That was just a symbolic moment of looking at a watch. I have approximately 13 and a half minutes to clean up and get ready for a wedding that I have to go to. See you on the next video.